It's interesting. I was having a conversation quite recently on the podcast, and it was about the kind of death of the US cycling scene. Because when you were at the height of your power, like this is like post 89, when you had that fame, we had this huge knock-on effect in the US as well. And the guy I was chatting to, maybe you even know his name, he was a domestic pro in the US, Jamie Palinetti, and he won a lot of races in the US on the domestic scene for a long time. But he went on to become a filmmaker, and he's now making a film about the rise and fall of American cycling and trying to trace this. Because you have those glory days like the Tour de Pont, where, you know, for anyone that hasn't seen that footage from those races, it's like being in the cobbled classics. Like the fans are fanatical, they're lining 10 deep. You guys are superstars. And then when I raced over there, I raced for Stellis Oncology in 2013. And that felt a little bit like the last days of the Roman Empire. So he's kind of tracing the rise and fall of American cycling. What do you think happened? What went wrong?
Well, I've watched it all the way through my career. And I believe it or not, in the 70s, when I started racing in Northern California, we had more junior racers in the United States than we did 20 years later. And we had then the Red Zinger Classic, which became the Coors Classic, but Red Zinger Classic was raced in Colorado. It's one of the American Flyers was made off of, and the crowds were like Europe. And but I think it's so expensive to put cycling events in the US. It's really expensive. And I think the organizers are always fighting police, getting permitting, and it's very complicated. And unfortunately, I don't think the revenue of the eyes that watch a cycling event, the economics don't make sense. So I do think if you had like the Tour of California, you had a major race in the US, that would help the sport. At the same time, I said it kind of ebbs and flows based upon if there's a cycling star. Obviously, when Armstrong started winning, I mean, he got people that would never consider, and, you know, inspired also by his story. And so you saw that rise. But every time I think like, oh my God, you know, it's always in my mind, and I think at least from my perspective, the Tour de France was so important for getting international recognition, even getting recognition from people in the US. I keep thinking, oh my God, there's not another generation of racers. And then all of a sudden you go, but there's some really incredible pros right now. The difference is the sport is so focused in Europe. And unfortunately, I don't think it, you know, even the Tour of California took like an individual wealthy person that decided to put the money into the sport. And, I don't know how to change that. I do think that, like, from a participation perspective, we talk about gravel, but gravel is really a byproduct. It's road riding on gravel. And what's nice, I think the road riding was taking off, after Armstrong's, let's say, success, people got into road riding. But I think, just the traffic and, perceived danger on the road, gravel is really taken that place. So there's a lot of gravel races, but from a national level perspective, where athletes are getting recognized, it's typical. I'm not surprised. I've watched it since I started cycling.
Who do you think, or how long do you think it's going to be before we see another US Tour de France winner?
Oh, it could be soon. I mean, there's some really great riders. But you would think, I just think it's to say about a Tour de France winner. So, look at Belgium. When was the last time a Belgian won the Tour de France? I think it was Eddie Merckx. And so, I think so. Yeah. Lucien Van Emp, maybe? Lucien Van Emp after that? Yeah, it was Lucien Van Emp. And that's a cycling country where it's like there's so many races coming out of there. So it's a rare occasion to get an athlete that can win the Tour. But I think we have a crop of young riders that have the potential. At the same time, you have an incredible crop of young riders that are truly at the very top. So it's a very competitive market right now, competitive competition. It just takes one person, but I say it takes just one person. But having that one person is not easy to find.
Yeah, and I think it's almost becoming harder and harder to find, because you look at the sacrifices they're making so early now. So you're having 16, 17-year-olds are behaving like full professionals now, where they're doing altitude camps, they're monitoring their diet. So if that talent isn't found and nurtured at a super early age, their European counterparts are going to have 2, 3, 4 years of that high level pro training. And I've seen in football 3 years, that's kind of what happened over here, that you need to get the talented 15, 16-year-olds to go to the UK at the age of 15, because if they don't go until they're 18, all of a sudden they're 3 years behind the English counterparts who have that coaching.
I think cycling, I would be not, I mean, if you have the physical ability, I mean, I think it's more about racing knowledge and skills. I think football is, there's a lot like tennis, golf. If you're late in there, you're done. But cycling, if you have the talent, you see people coming from mountain biking or running, and they make a good transition. But I think that right now, the irony is right now, it's getting back to where it was in the 80s, where 18, 19-year-olds, I mean, I know that at 18, I probably could have, if I know the physiology, and I could have won the Tour de France at 18. The physical capabilities there. So, but I had trained, Guimard, or that time my coach there was a real plan not to even let you enter the tour till you're 23, 24, which I kind of bought into that. But I think you can see right now that's not the case. I mean, physically, you're capable of doing it at 18, 19, 20. It's a lot of me, to me, it's like pro racing is about psychological, being able to race 100 races a year. That's where it kind of builds up that ability to stay at a high level of fitness. That's where you get better each year. But I think if you have talent, I do think the young riders, are getting noticed right away. And if you're 18 or 19, even get started, and you got the real talent, you'll get there really quickly. You might be 23 or 20 when you get taken into Europe. But the thing is, you got to be in Europe to be recognized, and you got to be racing there. And you either have to be on a national team or get on a team. I think it's more about your ability to get on a team is going to be the challenge. Because like you said, they're already recruiting very young riders. So if you're starting a little bit later, I don't know. I don't know if you got the talent, somebody will pick you up.
Yeah, talent papers over a lot of cracks. When you have that level of talent. Let me circle right back to the very start, Greg, because last time we talked, and any interview I've heard you in, everybody naturally wants to talk about the highlights. They want to talk about the Tour de France wins, the Worlds wins, the Hunting accident. But I actually haven't heard your origin story. I haven't heard how you got started. And just before the call, I was kind of sitting down with my girlfriend, and she was like, what was your first group ride like? And I was thinking about my first group ride. I went out and I was so embarrassed wearing cycling shorts that I pulled football shorts over them. And I cycled up to the local group ride, and I was using clip-in pedals, but it was my first time using clip-in pedals instead of Look pedals. Got to the front of the group ride. I peeled the football shorts off at this point, so I was looking kind of semi like I knew what I was doing. Got to the front of the group ride, and predictably enough, like boom, down I went right in front of everyone. And like to this day, the guys who were on that group ride still take the piss out of me for that first day. Can you remember your very first group ride?
Yeah, I mean, well, my first group ride was a Reno Whaleman club race. So I started riding with my dad the summer before. I started to get in shape for skiing, and I went to a ski camp. And at the time, the popular sport that was growing was hot dog skiing, freestyle skiing, and I lived at Lake Tahoe, Reno, which was I started skiing when I was 8 years old. So that was my passion at the time, and I wanted to learn to do aerials, flips, and all that. That was part of in freestyle skiing. You had mogul skiing, you have ballet and aerials, and so I went to. For my birthday, my parents bought me a week camp at a guy named Wayne Wong, who was like the star at the time in Whistler, Canada. I came back, and I used to work in the summer lifting hay on ranches or mowing lawns. And 4 weeks later, I made enough to buy a Raleigh Grand Prix, and my dad bought one, and we started riding together. But I didn't, it was just, I fell in love with just riding. The irony, when I left to go to this camp in June, we were blocked by a bike race in front of my dad's house, which was the Northern California Nevada State Championships. And it was so interesting because I'd never even seen bike racing before. Then I came back and started riding, and then we were driving into Carson City, and we saw another bike race, and it was the Pan American qualifying road race. And it went from Carson City up to Lake Tahoe. I mean, a 4,000 foot climb back down, and we followed it. And I kind of think back to it, and I'm going, here in that summer, we were exposed to 2 races, but never thought of racing. And 6 months later, I was at a bike shop in Reno looking at equipment. Once I get into something, I start looking at equipment. And there was no snow that winter, so I wasn't skiing. And a guy named Cliff Young, who was Nevada state champion or something like that, and Northern California combined the states, Northern California, Nevada, you competed with each other. And he asked me if I had ever thought of racing, and I hadn't. And he invited me to a Reno Wheelman Club meeting, and then, sat there listening. I kind of look at myself now going, like, I'm a hermit now. I mean, I'm going, I can't believe I actually went there. Then they suggested I do this club race, which is on the state championship course, which was in front of my parents' house. We had about 40 riders, but there were a national champion in there. There were national level riders in there. And I showed up just like you, but I didn't have Lycra. I had running shorts, a tank top, that time, and tennis shoes. And
we need a picture of this.
It had to be about 40 degrees out. It was winter. It was February, and we have snow. And I ended up getting second place and an uphill finish. And, I just remember just riding as hard as I could. And everybody stopped, after it came up to my dad and said, oh my gosh, I think your son has some talent. You should go get there's a race in 2 weeks, but he'll need a bike that fits him and a racing bike. And we ended up going back to that shop, and they had one bike in that shop that was a racing bike, an Italian bike, Cinelli, a yellow Cinelli. And so I bought a matching yellow jersey. Was there with the bike. Yeah. And so, but 2 weeks later, I showed up my race, and I just, I had the first event was kind of small. When I had 15 competitors, it was nothing. But my dad started racing too in the category 3 and 4. There had to be about 200 to 300 riders in his category. And I won it. And then I watched my dad, and he's a criterium in the park, and I could just see crash after crash after crash. My dad rode, on the outside of the peloton the whole time. But the next day was like the first, I'd say, bigger race. And there's, 60 intermediate, 40, 50 intermediates. That's 13 to 15 years old. But I got to the start line, and I'm, of course, in my yellow jersey and yellow bike. And I see some guy looking at me like with disgust. Like, I'm going, oh God, why does he hate me? I don't even know him. It's my second race. And anyways, he attacked, I followed, and I ended up winning the race. And then I won my first 11 races. On my 12th race, a guy named Kent Gordis, who actually helped write my first book called The Complete Book of Cycling in 1985. Kent Gordis beat me in this 5-mile race. Like, literally, it's like 6 laps. But he got a 2 bike length jump on me. And anyway, I went and congratulated him, and we started talking. And he told me, got to take that jersey off. And I go, what do you mean? He said, nobody wears the yellow jersey except if you're leading the Tour de France or winning the Tour de France. And I said, I don't even know what that event is. What is it? So I changed my jersey. And so, I think what was really interesting for me in racing was I never thought of competition. I mean, I didn't think of racing. Even skiing, I didn't follow. Our family didn't follow sports that much, really. My mom was an Olympic fan, but freestyle, I was really an outdoor. I mean, moving Los Angeles to Lake Tahoe when I was 8, I discovered Sierra Nevadas, and I was into fishing. I got into hiking, fishing, like fly fishing, and so I was in skiing. And so when I got into bike racing, it was my first time, racing a bike. Like, bike racing to me is still like the best of car racing and, say, running. And but what's crazy is I won prizes. I think my weekend I came away with $200-300 worth of prizes. You're going. My sister was a national level gymnast. She was on the national team. She really was a super talented gymnast. She toured in Russia. She competed at the time. It was an official authorized trip to South Africa, kind of an exhibition of gymnastics, and injured her back after her goal was the 1980 Olympics. Injured her back after the 76 Olympics. But if she, as a national, let's say national level gymnast, national team level, if you got a pair of sneakers, you'd be banned from the Olympics forever. And here in cycling, I mean, I think I was thinking about it when I was 18 years old, still a junior. No, I just turned amateur. I made $30,000 in cash. My son said that's equal of almost like $120,000 today.
Roman, I'm going to date myself here, but I've been riding the bike for almost 20 years. And in that time, I've cycled through every cycling apparel brand out there. And I kept swapping out different apparel brands each season until I found Le Col. There's something really different about Le Col. And as soon as you slip into the gear, you notice it feels different. It feels better. I've had the pleasure of chatting with Janto Barker on the podcast. He's the Le Col founder. And his dedication to crafting the fastest, most refined cycling apparel out there, it's nothing short of inspiring. Janto isn't just trying to create gear. I get the feeling he's actively and obsessively trying to perfect cycling gear. Trust me, as soon as you slip on the Le Col kit, as soon as you zip up that jersey, you can feel that commitment. The proof for Le Col, it's in the pudding. This is the same kit that Jay Hindley wore when he clinched overall victory in the Giro d'Italia. There's a confidence that comes with wearing apparel that's been battle tested and podium proven in races like the Giro d'Italia. Trust me, feeling good on the bike means you're going to perform better. If you have a second, I highly advise you to jump on over to lacol.cc and check out their amazing range of kit and experience this feeling for yourself.